The princess was playful and got captured by the enemy at the front lines, who demanded a hostage exchange. Lu Wei, the commanding general, looked at me disguised as a man beside him. I had followed Lu Wei for over 10 years, fighting alongside him through life and death, earning countless military merits. He was the only one who knew I was a woman, and he had once promised me a lifetime together. But when he saw the enemy's blade pressed against the princess's neck, Lu Wei was visibly heartbroken. "After we get the princess back, I'll come rescue you." I was handed over to the enemy by Lu Wei himself. When the blade was pressed against my neck, Lu Wei was already holding the rescued princess in his arms. I was dragged into the enemy camp, waiting day and night for Lu Wei to save me. But all I got was news that he was about to marry the princess. That night, I removed my chest bindings in front of the enemy emperor, Xialin. Later, Lu Wei finally sent a war declaration saying he would come rescue me. I watched Xialin playing with our child, making him laugh, and lazily replied, "Today is my son's 1-month celebration banquet. Don't come and ruin the mood." Lu Wei went mad. The two armies faced off. The enemy pressed their steel blade against the princess's neck and shouted, "I heard this Princess Jinyu is the most precious royal daughter of your Yue kingdom. If you want to save her life, exchange her for a prince." The princess trembled all over in fear, crying in a broken and fragile voice, "Lu Wei, save me." General Lu Wei's expression was stern. 3 days ago, the princess had put on royal airs and come to the border for a pleasure trip. She heard from somewhere that there was a valley on the border filled with exotic peonies, and made a fuss about coming to see the flowers. The generals in the army tried to stop her, but the princess scolded them angrily. "You bunch of brutes fight wars just so that this princess can go wherever she wants to see flowers, don't you? Otherwise, what is the point of your victories? If you dare to stop me again, watch out, or this princess will have Father Emperor cut your rations." At that time, Lu Wei and I were out surveying the battle terrain and weren't in the camp, so no one in the army dared to defy the princess's wishes. So the princess took a few maids and guards to that valley near the border. She also brought a painter, planning to have him paint a princess-admiring flower's portrait of her among the blossoms. Just when she was having fun, enemy soldiers who had been lying in ambush emerged from the flowers, killed all her maids, guards, and the painter, and only captured the princess alive. Today's battle was originally one that Lu Wei and I were both confident of winning. No one expected that at the critical moment, the enemy would bring the captured princess to the front lines, and suddenly the entire army was tied up with their hands bound. The battle reached a stalemate. Facing the enemy's unreasonable demands, someone in the army shouted angrily, "The prince is far too noble. How could he possibly risk himself at the border?" The enemy general's gaze fell on me. "Isn't there a ready-made prince right here?" Lu Wei also looked at me. I was abandoned by my imperial father in a military camp to fend for myself since childhood, and only preserved my honor by disguising myself as a man. Everyone in the army, and even the court officials, all thought I was a prince. Only Lu Wei knew that I was also a princess. But compared to Jinyu, a princess showered with endless love and favor, I, Joning, am just a down-and-out princess burdened with my maternal clan's grave crimes since birth. I followed Lu Wei for over 10 years, going through life and death with him, achieving numerous military merits. He was the only one who knew I was a woman, and he once promised me a lifetime together under the moon at the border. But when he saw the enemy's blade at the princess's neck, Lu Wei clearly felt heartache. "After we exchange for the princess, I'll come rescue you." He told me, "There is no other way now. I can only trouble you to use your identity as a prince to fool them first. Once the princess is safe, I'll come rescue you immediately." I raised my eyes to look at Lu Wei. "Is this a military order?" Lu Wei hesitated for a moment, then said to me, "It is a military order." He used a military order to demand I exchange myself for the princess's safety. I agreed. Lu Wei personally handed me over to the enemy general. That steel blade moved away from Jinyu's neck and fell onto my shoulder. The enemy general thought I was a man, so he struck harder, and the blade carved a bloody mark on my neck. When I winced in pain, I happened to see Lu Wei holding the princess tightly in his arms. General, I knew you could save me. The princess clung tightly to Lu Wei's chest like a wounded rabbit. Her delicate body trembled, so fragile, it stirred one's pity. Lu Wei held her tenderly, his heart probably thrown into chaos by her crying, so much so that this decisive and ruthless great general actually missed the best chance to save me because of it. By the time Lu Wei finished comforting the princess and remembered to save me, I had already been captured and taken into the enemy camp. When I woke up again, my hands and feet were tied, and I was thrown onto a bed in a tent. Alarm bells rang in my mind, and I hurriedly looked down at my clothes. The sash was intact. I suddenly let out a breath of relief, but then felt my whole body go limp. Unable to muster any strength had I been drugged. I scanned the furnishings of the tent. It was clearly the commander's tent at first glance. Something's wrong. Why are there dragon totems everywhere? I heard that the monarch of Qi personally led this campaign. Could it be? The tent flap was pulled open, and a thick voice came through. Your Majesty, the sixth prince exchanged for the princess has been given the muscle-weakening powder and placed on the bed. Placed on the bed? I was twisting my body and squirming on the bed when a tall figure already loomed over me. He was extremely handsome, with an alluring red mole at the corner of his eye, yet his brows were heavy with imperial authority. As he drew close, an irritating cold sandalwood fragrance washed over me. The scent came from a string of sandalwood prayer beads in his hand. Shilin, the new emperor of Qi, having ascended the throne less than 3 years ago, has already devoured all the small nations that once invaded the borders. With each nation destroyed, one more bead is added to the prayer beads in this new emperor's hand. Rumor has it that he keeps a string of prayer beads in his palm because he feels the weight of destruction and killing is too heavy. Now, this string of prayer beads already has 17. Oryue Kingdom is the only remaining great power capable of contending with Qi, but one careless move, and we too might become the 18th bead in this new emperor's hand. Yu, stay away from me. Shilin gripped my chin with his right hand wrapped in prayer beads, narrowed his eyes and scrutinized me. A stutterer. You are the stutterer. I shot back instantly. Shilin chuckled lightly. Lu Wei abandoned you for the princess. How does that feel? I'd been tempered in the military for years, and after the two nations went to war, I became Lu Wei's strategist behind the scenes. Openly and secretly, I had already crossed swords with Shilin many times. If you asked whether I feared him, not really, but today was the first time I'd been this close to him, and with the drug in my system, I couldn't help feeling a bit nervous. All I knew was that before Lu Wei came to rescue me, my identity as a prince was my only protection. Even the most disgraced prince could survive in an enemy nation as a hostage. But if he discovered I was actually a woman, and an unfavored princess at that, the outcome would surely be miserable. The princess is a woman, and I am her younger imperial brother. A brother saving his sister that is heroic, too, I said stubbornly. Shilin stared at me for a long time, his eyes brimming with amusement. Suddenly he extended a finger, sliding it from my neck all the way down to my collar. I was terrified at that moment, but Shilin's hand didn't reach into my collar. Instead, he untied the rope binding my hands. I am not sure if it was just my imagination, but when he saw the red marks the rope had left on my wrists, his eyes clearly darkened. You dare untie me? Aren't you afraid I'll kill you? Hearing this, he turned around, grabbed a dagger, and personally placed it in my palm. Go ahead, kill me. I immediately tried to grab the dagger, but forget about killing him, I couldn't even hold on to the handle. I not only dare to untie you, but I am also going to keep you by my side as a little slave. As long as you don't take the antidote, the muscle-weakening powder will leave your limbs powerless. You can't even pick up a spoon. Whatever I do to you, you won't be able to resist. When Shilin said this, he deliberately leaned close to me. I couldn't muster any strength, and my face turned red from the strain. Shilin chuckled softly. What are you blushing for? You think I am so starved I'd eat anything. I don't like men. Me, in the end. Shilin kicked me and the dagger off the bed together, then lay down himself and fell fast asleep. I tried several times but couldn't pick up the dagger. In the end, I could only slump weakly against the side of the bed and sit down. Lu Wei will come rescue me. I hugged my knees, remembering how, when I was little in the palace, whenever I stood next to Imperial Sister Jinyu, Lu Wei never noticed me. Back then he was a study companion to the princes, and he treated me better than any of my imperial brothers. I asked him why, and he said it was because I was the sister who looked the most like Jinyu among all the princesses. Later in the military camp, I once asked him if he was treating me as a substitute for imperial sister. Lu Wei pinched my nose bridge and said he was just speaking carelessly as a child, that I was petty for remembering something said so long ago. He said we'd been through life and death together on the battlefield, and he even knew my only secret. Jonning, no one can come between you and me. But on the battlefield he chose Imperial Sister without hesitation. I lay awake all night with my eyes open, making excuses for him. He should have settled the princess by now, right? Even if he was finding a military doctor in the camp to treat the princess, one night should be enough time. Tomorrow morning he should be able to raise troops to rescue me, right? Even if it is just charging into the enemy camp to try, at least let me know he wanted to save me. I stayed awake like this all night. And even when dawn came, Lu Wei never came to raid the camp and rescue me. I wasn't willing to give up, so I waited 3 more days. During these 3 days, I was locked in Shilin's tent. Apart from feeling weak all over and having to smell that intimidating sandalwood scent every day, at least I didn't lack food or drink. I'd read historical records and knew that although being a hostage in an enemy country was humiliating for a prince, at least they wouldn't go hungry or cold. But those hostages in the history books were rarely kept by the emperor's side, serving as bed-warming little slaves for the emperor. Every time this happens, I am grateful that I am flat-chested and my voice is rough. As long as no one comes to strip my clothes, I can keep lying low as a prince. After Shilin fed me the muscle-weakening powder, he didn't guard against me at all. So much so that one day when he wasn't around, I tentatively walked out of the tent, and everyone in the army just treated me like air. I ran to a corner of the military camp and whistled with my fingers. Lu Wei and I raised several thousand carrier pigeons in the military camp. These pigeons were scattered everywhere, circling above the border between the two countries, and all trained by me to follow my commands. Sure enough, as soon as the whistle fell, a pigeon landed by my hand, and there was indeed a letter tied to its foot. Lu Wei had indeed sent me a message. I unfolded it, thinking it would be about coordinating my escape, but unexpectedly it read, "I heard you are being treated as a hostage in the enemy camp. Why not take this opportunity to be our spy? With Jinyu in danger this time, the emperor will surely question me. I must achieve a great merit to avoid punishment. Jialing, lure the enemy deep, take it slow, and after you help me succeed, I will surely ask the emperor for your hand in marriage." So, he wanted me to stay in the enemy camp and help him redeem himself through merit. After waiting another 3 days, I heard that Lu Wei was breaking camp to return to the capital. I heard that Princess Jinyu couldn't stand the hardships at the border and made a fuss for Lu Wei to accompany her back to the capital. I was in Shilin's tent when I heard his general say this. He is going back to the capital just like that. What about me? Another month passed, and the general who gathered intelligence said, "I heard that news of Princess Jinyu being captured by our army has spread throughout Yue Kingdom. Having fallen into enemy hands alone, all the civil and military officials are questioning the princess's chastity." The general didn't avoid me at all, saying, to protect the princess's virtue, Lu Wei used his military merits to petition the Yue emperor for Princess Jinyu's hand in marriage. The two will be wed soon. Military merits. The military merits I helped Lu Wei achieve as his strategist behind the scenes. He once said that the day he returned to the capital in triumph with military honors would be the day he would restore my princess identity and ask for my hand in marriage. I never liked being a prince. I am a princess, and I wanted the world to know that a princess can also achieve great things in the military. But now, all my years of dedication by Lu Wei's side turned out to be paving the way for my imperial sister. When Lu Wei asked for my imperial sister's hand, did he still remember that he had abandoned me in the enemy camp for over a month? He didn't remember. That night, seeing that I was preoccupied, Shilin ordered me, "Attend to us while we change." I came back to my senses, only to realize that under the flickering candlelight, Shilin's robust body, perfect features, and his strategic achievements were not inferior at all. No, they far surpassed those of General Lu Wei. Lu Wei was going to marry a princess, and my imperial father had left me to fend for myself since I was little. No one would come to save me. I could only save myself. I obediently walked up to Shilin, reaching out my hand, but instead of helping him change, I placed it on my own sash, right in front of him. I removed my outer robe, then pulled out the hairpin holding up my hair. My ink-black long hair cascaded down like a waterfall. Then I removed the chest binding that had been hiding my female identity. "Your Majesty doesn't like men, so do you like women?" He gripped my restless hand. "Everyone says I am a tyrant. Aren't you afraid of me?" "Your Majesty only kills those who betrayed you and deserve to die. I won't betray you, so naturally I don't need to fear you." That night, even the candlelight didn't burn as bright as the light in Shilin's eyes. He pinned me on the bed and ravished me. Early the next morning, Shilin's subordinate rushed into the tent with the daily intelligence report, only to stumble upon several wrinkled men's undergarments hanging outside the screen. Meanwhile, the mighty and tall emperor walked out from behind the screen, looking completely satisfied, personally picking up the outer robe that had flown onto the chair last night. The subordinate's eyes darted back and forth between the emperor and the clothes on the ground a dozen times, then suddenly stomped his foot, deeply distressed. "I've long said your Majesty should select a consort, 3 years on the throne and not a single woman touched. Now you are truly starving, and that hostage is a man." A man. I was already awake, just feeling a swelling ache in my waist. Hearing these words, it suddenly dawned on me. "Oh, your Majesty has been starving for 3 years. No wonder last night was so intense." Before I could finish, Shilin had already covered my mouth. When I said this, I used my original voice and deliberately made it coquettish, sounding both smooth and sweet. Though his subordinate didn't dare peek behind the screen, he could judge appearance from the voice. After his shock, he gave a thumbs up. "Your Majesty eats well indeed." Zealand shot him a glance and casually wrapped an outer robe embroidered with dragons and clouds around me. I specifically looked. This was the casual dragon robe he wore yesterday. He scolded me in a low voice. "You are a princess too. Have you no shame at all?" I answered with a smile. "We've already gone that far. What is there to be shy about? Why pretend to be innocent?" He kept a stern, handsome face, provoked as if about to get angry, but in the end only gave my waist a light pinch under the covers. My eyes curved into a smile. Last night I discovered that Shilin appears to be a murderous tyrant to outsiders, but once someone enters his intimate defenses, he becomes very easily flustered and can't handle the slightest teasing. Last night, in the heat of passion, this cunning man tried to trick the border defense map of Yue Kingdom out of my mouth. I kept my guard up the whole time. No matter how he pressed or tried to trick me into confessing, I never gave a straight answer, instead saying some lewd things, made him blush bright red with embarrassment. He asked me where I learned those words. I said I picked them up from reading those storybooks in the military camp. The way Shilin looked at me changed. "Don't go learning dirty talk from those ruffian soldiers." What he didn't know was that this was my strategy. As long as I kept acting frivolous, he couldn't ask me about intelligence matters. I wanted to save myself. I wanted to survive. But that didn't mean I would betray my homeland. After what happened last night, I'd already thrown away my dignity anyway. When it comes to survival, there is no need to care whether the means are lowly or noble. That is just being too pretentious. I've been hanging around military camps for over a decade. Those rules for disciplining women, I haven't followed them for a single day. I leaned close to Shilin, looked into his eyes, and blinked. "Doesn't your Majesty like that? I don't follow the rules. Last night you." "Enough. I don't need you narrating it." Seelin's ears turned completely red. He turned his face away from me, clenched his right fist, and gave 2 tactical coughs, before finally remembering there was still a shocked and flustered subordinate outside the screen. "What is with the panic?" The subordinate walked in behind the screen with his head lowered and eyes down, not daring to look around carelessly. He presented an intelligence report, and I boldly leaned over to look. This was intelligence gathered and compiled from various sources by the spies Shilin had planted in the Yue Kingdom's imperial city. It recorded various changes of important figures in the Yue Kingdom's imperial city, like a court diary. Seeing me lean over, Shilin folded up the intelligence report. I shook his arm. Let's look together. Let's look together. Didn't you see everything last night? What is with the hiding now? Shilin got a headache from my pestering and let me look. This month, quite a few things happened in the Yue Kingdom too. The Yue Kingdom's imperial palace. Princess Jinyu, who was ill, was summoned to court by the old emperor and made to kneel and admit her wrongs. The news of her willful trip to the border to admire flowers, which led to her capture, had long spread throughout the Yue Kingdom. After being rescued and brought back to the capital, she faced much criticism from the common people and impeachment from the censors. On the surface, the censors accused Princess Jinyu of disregarding the greater good, being willful and unruly and deserving punishment. Behind the scenes, common folk cursed her as a troublemaker and drama queen, insisting on going to the border to cause problems for the soldiers. If she wanted to court death, she should just die and not burden others. After Jinyu escaped from the enemy camp, people not only questioned her chastity but also felt she completely deserved it. Because of one princess's willfulness, the front lines lost a battle they could have won. If the princess wasn't punished, it would surely stir public resentment and chill the hearts of the soldiers. So as soon as Jinyu's illness slightly improved, she was brought to court by the emperor. Jinyu knelt with her body tilted to the side. When impeached by the censors, her face was full of grievance. She didn't dare refute a single word, yet innocently cast her gaze toward Lu Wei at the head of the military officials' row. The princess looked so fragile she might shatter at any moment. Lu Wei felt heartache and stepped forward to defend her. This matter cannot be entirely blamed on the princess. If anyone is to blame, blame the sixth prince. The sixth prince he spoke of was me. I was the sixth in line. When disguised as a man, I was the sixth prince, going by the alias Yuan Ning. At the sudden mention of me, the officials were momentarily stunned. Even Father Emperor on his throne seemed to only just remember that I existed. These years I had been mingling in the military camp, serving as Lu Wei's behind-the-scenes strategist. Lu Wei said my maternal clan was guilty of crimes, so I couldn't stand out too much. Thus, for every victory I had helped plan, all the military merits were credited to him alone. Therefore, neither the court nor the commoners knew that the sixth princes they had overlooked had kept the borders peaceful for 10 years. The matter of Lu Wei exchanging me for the princess, he certainly wouldn't dare hide that. So it turned out, even knowing I had been captured by the enemy nation, Father Emperor still refused to remember he had a daughter like me. That day, the sixth prince was ignorant and playful, luring the princess to the valley to admire rare flowers, which led to the princess falling into the enemy's ambush, and everyone by her side perished or went missing. Lu Wei defended the princess, saying, "Now the sixth prince is trapped in the enemy camp, practically a hostage, and is already atoning for his mistake of scheming against the imperial sister." Lu Wei was a rising star among the military generals, and as someone who personally witnessed this incident, his words naturally convinced all the civil and military officials. It seems it wasn't the princess's fault then. "Jinyu, my child, please rise." The old emperor on the throne breathed a sigh of relief, his tone gentle toward Jinyu. Having her come to court to plead guilty today was just a formality to appease public resentment. As for the sixth princess, she is unruly and without virtue. The old emperor's voice turned cold again. Her mother consort committed treason, so she was born a sinner. Save her if possible, if not, just abandon her. She is insignificant anyway. Lu Wei wanted to speak but held back, not refuting anything. In front of all the court officials, he helped the princess to her feet. Before the princess could stand straight, she collapsed into his arms, soft and boneless, so Lu Wei had no choice but to carry her. The princess asked in his arms, "Aren't you afraid Sister Zhoning will be upset with you when she returns after you said that? If Zhoning wants to return to Yue Kingdom, she'll still need me to lead troops to rescue her. When she sees me fighting through blood and battle to save her, she surely won't have the heart to blame me." Lu Wei said, "But she is a woman after all. I can't make her wait too long. It is only right that you want to save Sister Zhoning. I only have one request. Could you lead troops to save her after our wedding?" Jinyu nestled against Lu Wei's chest, her voice soft as water. "General, without you, even if I were rescued from the enemy nation to preserve the royal family's honor, I am afraid my only path would be to hang myself with white silk. If you don't marry me first, I am afraid by the time the general rescues my sister, I'll have already been forced to death." Lu Wei's heart immediately softened. "All right, after marrying you, I'll go on the expedition to rescue Zhao Ning." Jinyu's eyes lit up. "Really? Zhao Ning has been roughing it in the military camp for years. She is tough as nails, not like you, princess. So delicate and naive that you need someone to protect you. Princess, you'd die without me. Without me, Zhao Ning would at most suffer a little in the enemy country," Lu Wei said gently. "Princess, how could I ever abandon you? Zhao Ning, she can wait." Soon, the imperial edict for the marriage came down, and the wedding date was to be determined after the imperial astrologer calculated an auspicious day. The imperial astrologer wrote several auspicious dates on red paper and handed it to the princess, casually saying, "The 12th of next month is an excellent day." The princess glanced at it and said, "Why are they all dates within this month? For my grand wedding ceremony, the entire palace needs at least half a year to prepare. How can it be done hastily in just 1 month?" The imperial astrologer explained, "I heard that General Lu intends to lead troops to rescue the 6th prince after the wedding. Saving someone is naturally urgent, so I only calculated the auspicious days within this month. The sooner you marry, the sooner the 6th prince will be out of danger." Just as these words were spoken, Lu Wei happened to walk to the doorway. He stopped, but heard the princess say, "The imperial astrologer is so thoughtful, isn't he? My marriage, a major life event, has to accommodate that unfavored prince. The wedding will be set for half a year later." Lu Wei's brows furrowed. He barged in and made the final call. "Half a year is absolutely out of the question. If the princess feels 1 month is too hasty, then let's set it for 3 months later. Would the state preceptor please wait in the main hall? I need to discuss this matter in detail with the princess." As soon as the state preceptor left, the princess immediately slammed the table and stood up. Being captured and held in the enemy camp for 3 days and 3 nights, this princess's reputation is already in tatters. Only a sensational grand wedding can salvage my dignity. 3 months is too short. If we wait half a year to marry, I am afraid I'll only be able to go to the border to collect Zhao Ning's corpse. Lu Wei didn't back down in the slightest either. "You care about her that much. Zhao Ning has been by my side at the border, watching out for each other for 10 years. If I said there were no feelings, I am afraid the princess wouldn't believe it either. I trust that with Zhao Ning's wits, staying in the enemy camp for 3 months won't be a problem. But if the princess wants to use half a year to drag out her death, I will absolutely never agree." Lu Wei's attitude was firm. The princess's armored nails dug into her palm. She gritted her teeth and finally relented. "Fine, then 3 months later." The princess thought. 3 months should be enough for that tyrant Shilin to discover the truth about her disguising as a man and torment Zhao Ning to death, right? Shilin did indeed torment me day after day, from the beast-skin dragon bed in the border camp to the 8-horse carriage returning to the capital. Then from the bumpy carriage to the stable and comfortable grand dragon bed in the Qi Kingdom's imperial palace. Only after entering the Qi Kingdom's imperial palace did I realize that Shilin's harem was truly completely empty. I heard that when he was at the prince's manor, he also kept away from women, devoting himself entirely to studying military tactics and martial arts. The previous 2 monarchs governed poorly, causing Qi to become impoverished and weak. At that time, the 17 Yi Nu states gnawed and carved up Qi's territory like rats from all directions. The 17 Yi Nu states weren't legitimate nations. They were more like scattered nomadic tribes, skilled in mounted combat, cunning and treacherous. They once joined forces to massacre tens of thousands of innocent civilians at Qi's border, provoking Qi right to its face, while Qi had already weakened to the point of being unable to retaliate. When Shilin ascended the throne, this was the mess he faced. 17-year-old Shilin, upon first taking the throne, used thunderous measures to restore order to the court. External threats unremoved meant endless internal troubles. He decisively led the army himself, and with terrifying strategies, annihilated 7 Yi new tribes in 1 year, bringing justice for the tens of thousands of civilians who died tragically at the border. Battle after battle, in 3 years he exterminated all 17 Yi new states, completely recovering the fragmented Qi 3 years ago. Everyone said Shilin would be the emperor who lost the nation. 3 years later, all those who made snide remarks had their nations destroyed and their people wiped out under Shilin's sword. Such an emperor earned his subjects' admiration, but also their fear. After years of war, Shilin truly had no interest in pursuing women. So Shilin really was starving. That night, after breaking his fast, he caught hold of me alone, looking ready to devour me completely. The day the carrier pigeon arrived, I was being pressed against the desk in the imperial study by him. I opened the letter and saw Lu Wei's handwriting. Zhao Ning, you've trained in the military camp for years. Although Princess Jinyu is a few years older than you, she is delicate and naive, far less resilient and brave than you. The princess was so frightened that she fell seriously ill and truly cannot be without me. I have no choice but to stay by her side. Within 3 months, I will surely raise an army to rescue you. He didn't dare reveal his marriage to Jinyu in the letter, but I had already heard from Shilin's side some auspicious day 3 months later would be Lu Wei and the princess's wedding day. Lu Wei thought I didn't know about this and still tried to reassure me in the letter during these 3 months. I hope you will endure hardships and bide your time. Continue to lure the enemy deeper and wait for me to rescue you from the fire. Since you've become mine, you are not allowed to think about other men in front of me. Seeing me focused on reading the letter, Shilin's tone turned sour. Your Majesty, Lu Wei says he will raise an army to attack Qi and rescue me in 3 months. I directly betrayed Lu Wei's secret letter to Shilin. He dares speak of rescue. Zilin raised an eyebrow, his hand wearing Buddhist beads wrapped around my waist, his breath intertwining with mine. Rescue you back to Yue to continue disguising yourself as a man and never being yourself, or rescue you back to share a husband with that princess. I instinctively wanted to defend Lu Wei, but I found that everything Shilin said was simply irrefutable. I couldn't argue against a single word. Zhao Ning, I possess you, and you can also completely possess me. Possess me as Princess Zhao Ning, not as Lu Wei's nameless, titleless strategist hiding behind the scenes. In comparison, being by Lu Wei's side is the real sea of fire. He is not saving you. Zhao Ning, one can only save oneself. Zilin's gaze was blazing. His eagle-like eyes pierced through my flesh, seeing through my unwillingness and desires. He gently lifted my chin. It is precisely because you figured this out that you climbed onto my dragon bed, isn't it? I was exposed, but in front of him, I had long thrown away my dignity. So my reaction was actually a light laugh. Then I boldly leaned close to Shilin's ear and breathed softly. 3 months enough to conceive a child. I reached out to hook Shilin's belt. Can your Majesty manage it? Outside the window, bamboo leaves swayed in the wind, and the brushes on the brush stand clattered against each other as the desk shook. I grabbed a brush and paper, scrawling a crooked reply. General enemy has penetrated deep. After writing, I hurriedly tied the letter to the bird's leg, stroking the carrier pigeon's soft feathered back. The carrier pigeon spread its wings and flew off, heading toward Yue Kingdom. He finally had no distractions, focusing entirely on matching Shilin's movements. A day later, Lu Wei received the carrier pigeon's letter. Opening it, he found absurdly crooked handwriting. He looked carefully at the 4 characters. The enemy has penetrated deep. becoming puzzled, was Zhao Ning's hand injured? Why was the writing so shaky? Many strokes were wavy and undulating, shaking quite severely. His heart suddenly ached. It seemed Zhao Ning wasn't doing well in Qi Kingdom. Looking at the words "General" on the letter, he recalled the 10 years at the border, whenever they were stuck with no way to defeat the enemy, or when he became anxious over matters. Zhao Ning would always be by his side, saying softly, "General, I am here for you." Lu Wei pressed the crooked words, "General," on the envelope against his chest. He made up his mind after marrying Princess Jinyu, he would immediately go rescue Zhao Ning. This scene happened to be seen by the princess passing by the window. The princess didn't throw a fit on the spot. That afternoon, she entered the palace and complained to the old emperor. "Father Emperor, the reason Zhao Ning harmed your daughter wasn't because she was ignorant. She has long been colluding with Qi Kingdom. She is a spy planted by Qi Kingdom in the military camp. Lu Wei has also been kept in the dark. If Lu Wei wants to lead troops to rescue Zhao Ning someday, please don't agree to it, Father Emperor." By the time Lu Wei learned that Zhao Ning had entered the palace, the old emperor had already issued an imperial decree announcing it to the world. This decree was passed to Qi Kingdom's palace by spies that very night. "I've been feeling lazy these past few days. The soft tendon powder was dispelled long ago, yet I am even more fatigued than when I was taking medicine. Exilin wanted to find an imperial physician to examine me, but I suspected it was mostly due to my own excessive indulgence. I didn't want the physician to spell it out, so I kept declining the Imperial Medical Bureau's requests to take my pulse. When the intelligence report arrived today, Shilin didn't want me to see it. I insisted on seeing it. He sighed, handed me the report, and looked at me with eyes full of pity. After you read it, don't cry." I unfolded the report in confusion and saw it written, "The 6th Prince Yuening framed his imperial sister, defected to the enemy, and betrayed the nation. His crimes are unforgivable. He is to be expelled from the imperial clan immediately, and no one is permitted to send troops to rescue such a treasonous traitor." My hands holding the report were trembling. Anger and sorrow rushed to my head. A sweet metallic taste rose in my throat, and I suddenly vomited a mouthful of blood, splattering right onto the 4 characters. "Defected to the enemy and betrayed the nation." Shilin caught my body in his arms. In my final moments of consciousness, I could only feel this enemy emperor holding me tightly in his embrace, hearing his voice crack as he called for someone to fetch the military physician. When I woke up again, a white-haired imperial physician was taking my pulse. Seeing me open my eyes, the physician beamed with joy. "Congratulations, my lady. You are already 1 month pregnant." I was stunned for a moment, my hand touching my belly. Shilin was very happy, probably wanting to cheer me up. He whispered in my ear like a child, boasting, "I really am quite capable." He decreed that I was to be made imperial consort. "Once the child is born, whether it is a prince or a princess, you will be my only empress." I shook my head and told Shilin that the time wasn't right yet. "Isn't Lu Wei having his grand wedding with imperial sister Jinyu in 3 days? I want to write him a letter. Bring me paper and brush." Shilin was displeased. "You are still thinking about that man. We already have a child. Why won't you give me your whole heart?" His tone made him sound more like a nameless little wife than me. I started writing while soothing Shilin, this bristling lion. "I heard Imperial Sister's grand wedding cost the people dearly and took 3 months to prepare. I should send her a wedding gift, too." I wrote a letter to Lu Wei recounting all the affection between us. Several hundred words flowed freely. Shilin read it through gritted teeth, as if drowning in jealousy. After handing the letter to the carrier pigeon, I returned to the desk, took a large sheet of rice paper, and began drawing. "What are you drawing?" Shilin came over and asked. "The defense map of Yue Kingdom's borders." "Hasn't your majesty always wanted it?" Shilin actually stopped my brush. "Asking you for the defense map back then was just to test your sincerity. Now that we even have a child together, I naturally won't doubt you, Jianing. I don't want you to bear the sin of treason." I told him calmly. "The emperor is a tyrant. The princess squeezes the people dry for a wedding, and the nation-defending general is a fickle heartbreaker. A country like this is destined to fall sooner or later. Zilin, your iron cavalry will one day trample over the land of Yue, rather than rivers of blood and millions of corpses when that time comes. It is better to take the city defense maps and break through Yue's borders without shedding a single drop of blood. All I ask is one promise from you: treat the common people and the surrendering soldiers with kindness. Zilin promised in a deep voice. I will never harm your people. I picked up the blood-stained intelligence report beside me and threw it into the fire. Watching the flames flare up, I smiled coldly. Since Imperial Father has decided that I am a traitor selling out my country, I'll show him exactly what it means to grant every wish. In the blink of an eye, the long-awaited wedding day of Princess Jinyu arrived. Dressed in red, wearing a phoenix crown, she waited at the princess's residence for Lu Wei to come and marry her. When the auspicious hour arrived, Lu Wei entered the princess's residence to receive Jinyu. But Jinyu sat firmly in front of the vanity. Make the prince consort wait outside for this princess a bit longer. Let the world know that him marrying me is him reaching above his station. Not that this princess's reputation was ruined and she had to beg him to marry her. The maids and nannies beside her didn't dare say much, and only came out to explain with a smile, the princess is throwing a little tantrum. Would the prince consort please go in and coax her? Only then will the princess be willing to come out. Lu Wei was used to life in the military camp, and deep down he found these dawdling games quite annoying. But it was a joyous occasion, so he still patiently prepared to go inside and coax the princess. Just then, a carrier pigeon landed on Lu Wei's arm. Lu Wei's attention was immediately captured by the pigeon, a letter from Zhao Ning. He held the pigeon still and removed the envelope from it. Unfolding it to find the letter was a full 3 pages long. Zhao Ning's handwriting was clear and neat, addressing him with Dear Lu Lang. Reading this letter is like seeing you in person. The letter recounted in detail the past 10 years, every little moment between Lu Wei and Zhao Ning at the border, when Lu Wei was surrounded by enemy troops. It was Zhao Ning who disregarded life and death to lead soldiers in and help him break through. Trapped in a valley on a snowy night, it was Zhao Ning who huddled with him for warmth. Lu Wei rose from an unknown soldier all the way to the Grand General who pacifies the nation, and every military achievement along the way was made possible by Zhao Ning behind the scenes. The second page of the letter described how Zhao Ning couldn't get enough food or warm clothing in Qi, suffering endless humiliation. The last page was even stained with a few blurred drops of blood. Lu Lang that day to save the imperial sister, you abandoned me to fall into enemy hands, giving only a single promise. For the sake of that promise, I waited day and night for you to rescue me, only to receive news that you were to marry the imperial sister. I risked my life to escape back to Yue, only to find that Father Emperor had already demoted me to a treasonous scoundrel who colluded with the enemy. I dared not reveal my identity, fleeing all the way, enduring countless hardships to reach the foot of the imperial city, only to be captured by mountain bandits into Ying Mountain. Qi was too far, and you were unwilling to come rescue me. Now at the foot of the imperial city, will Lu Lang still stand by and watch me die? Ying Mountain was just outside the imperial city. Every word in this letter stabbed into Lu Wei's heart like a knife, leaving him no time to think further. Yingshan. Lu Wei looked toward the direction of Yingshan, tears welling in his eyes. Zhou escaped from Qi Kingdom, risking her life for me. She is waiting for me at Yingshan to rescue her. The old servant woman nearby was still egging on. Prince consort, hurry and coax the princess. Get her to come out of her chamber. Lu Wei clutched this letter for help, glanced at the princess's chamber, hesitated for just that one moment, then rushed out of the princess's manor without looking back. This series of actions drew startled cries from everyone. Jinyu was still inside her chamber, refusing to come out. Hearing the commotion outside suddenly grow louder, she thought Lu Wei had come to knock on the door and receive her. She called out coquettishly toward the door. Prince, this princess demands you carry me out before I'll leave the princess's manor. But the door was opened from outside, and what came in were several nannies and maidservants. Jinyu's expression changed. Why is it you? Where is the prince consort? The nanny replied awkwardly. Reporting to the princess, the prince consort received a letter by carrier pigeon and ran off. What letter? This servant doesn't know, only picked up a peony petal from the ground. Jinyu had known long ago that Zhouning would send letters to Lu Wei by carrier pigeon. The letters Zhouning sent often had a peony petal tucked inside a tacit signal between her and Lu Wei, reminding each other that this letter should be read first. When a peony petal fell out of a pigeon-delivered letter, the contents of the letter no longer mattered. Jinyu was furious. She snatched the petal, threw it on the ground, and crushed it hard, roaring, "Lu Wei, you actually fled our wedding for a letter from Zhao Ning. You care about her that much. For her sake, you've made me lose all face today." She tore off the bridal crown from her head, and in front of all the officials and nobles in the courtyard, smashed it to pieces. After fleeing the wedding, Lu Wei galloped to the military camp in the outskirts of the capital, mobilized 3,000 soldiers, and headed straight for Ying Mountain. Surround the entire mountain. Anyone who tries to leave, kill them. Lu Wei gave the military order. 3,000 soldiers held their spears, aiming at every path on Ying Mountain soon. The soldiers brought forward a man dressed in fine silk with a fierce mask on his face, along with several attendants who spoke in high-pitched voices when they called out, "How dare you, insolent! You dare to escort this? Where is Zhao Ning?" Before the masked man could finish speaking, Lu Wei rushed up and kicked him right in the face. This kick not only knocked the man to the ground, but also shattered the mask. After the mask cracked open, revealing the bandit's full face, everyone gasped. Prince Yue. One day earlier, the king of Yue caught a carrier pigeon in the palace. Tied to the pigeon's leg were a drawing and a short letter. The drawing depicted a colorful horse, and the letter read, "There is a color-changing horse in Yingshan. Come to Yingshan secretly, your highness, and I'll show you." During the years I lived in the palace, I was often poisoned and nearly drowned several times. All these incidents were disguised as accidents. Father never sought justice for me to survive. I could only try to win over that fool. The king of Yue, though he was a fool, his mother had taught him to be somewhat snobbish, and he never gave me a proper glance. But he was already the easiest protective talisman to manipulate in the palace. That is when I learned to raise carrier pigeons. Sending letters by pigeon was very novel to the mentally impaired king of Yue, and he believed everything written in the letters without doubt. At first, I piqued his curiosity by copying mythical beasts from the classic of mountains and seas. Later, I used simple words to manipulate his behavior. When I had no choice but to appear by the lake in the imperial garden, I would tell the king of Yue a day in advance via carrier pigeon. Tomorrow there will be a frog diving performance at the imperial garden pond. That time when an unidentified little eunuch pushed me into the lake and I nearly drowned, the king of Yue, who had come to watch the frog diving, saved my life by a twist of fate. Another time, Jinyu's mother, the queen, invited me to a banquet. A day in advance, I told the king of Yue in a letter, "Tomorrow the pastries on each princess's plate will contain night-luminescent pearls that emit 7-colored light." So on the day of the banquet, the prince of Yue snatched all the pastries from my plate and tried to stuff them in his mouth. The empress was shocked and hurriedly tried to stop him, but the prince of Yue still got mildly poisoned. Only after his most beloved prince was harmed did imperial father give the empress a small punishment and decided to throw me into the military camp to fend for myself, so I wouldn't drag down his precious prince of Yue anymore. People with mental deficiencies are the easiest to manipulate. 10 years later, I could still trick the prince of Yue into going to Yingshan with the same trick and made him keep the secret. That day, the entire imperial city was focused on the princess's grand wedding. No one cared that the Prince of Yue had gone on an incognito trip to Yingshan to have fun. Soon, Shilin told me, Lu Wei has been stripped of his military power and thrown in prison. Stripping his military power is getting off light. I blew on the pregnancy stabilizing medicine in my bowl, my expression calm and serene. Right under the imperial city, he bypassed the emperor and privately mobilized 3,000 troops, and even besieged a prince on an incognito trip. Now, even if Lu Wei talks his way to the heavens, my imperial father will be convinced he was trying to rebel. Lu Wei's achievements overshadowed the ruler, and Imperial Father has long been wary of him. Today's incident just gives Imperial Father a good excuse to remove a powerful minister. At this point, Lu Wei's 9 clans have already been pushed onto the chopping block, but before the blade falls, there is still a way to break the deadlock. Zealin was like a teacher who already knew the answer, yet was willing to patiently wait for the student to respond. Who else can save him? Naturally, it is my dear elder Imperial sister. But unfortunately, from the moment Lu Wei broke off the engagement, Jinyu's innocence and reputation were also ruined. The commoners are all gossiping that the princess lost her virtue in the enemy camp, which is why General Lu abandoned her on their wedding day. My imperial sister holds grudges for the smallest slights. However much she loved Lu Wei before, that is how much she wants him dead now. My eyes were cold, the corner of my lips curling up. Whether it is Lu Wei or Jinyu, Father Emperor or the Prince of Yue, none of them ever cared about my life. But making this group of people who betrayed me tear each other apart only requires a single letter from me, Jilin said. Manipulating human nature is the key to victory. I looked at Jilin. When your majesty let me into your tent that day, weren't you also manipulating my desire to survive? You were waiting for me to crawl into your dragon bed all along, weren't you? Jilin didn't deny it, instead asking me. The day I captured Jinyu, I also received a pigeon carrying intelligence that specified which day and hour the princess would go to that valley to admire flowers. I've been watching you write a lot lately, and only then did I realize that handwriting was yours. Little Fox, your imperial sister's capture was your design, and even I was part of your scheme, wasn't I? I smiled. Imperial sister said I framed her, and she wasn't wrong. I want her dead. Lu Wei betrayed me for Imperial sister. Then let him die together with Imperial sister. As I expected, after Lu Wei was imprisoned, Jinyu not only didn't plead for him, but also went before the emperor to fan the flames, bringing up old matters, saying that Lu Wei committed a grave crime by exchanging a prince for a princess on the battlefield. He was negligent in protecting the princess first, then exchanged a prince for the princess on the battlefield. Even though I was out of favor, I was still officially a prince, representing the face of the Qi royal family. As the Grand General, when faced with the enemy's threats, Lu Wei not only failed to break the deadlock, but actually made a deal using 2 members of the royal family. When you really think about it, this wasn't just slapping the emperor's face, it practically threw away all of Qi's morale. This was also why Lu Wei initially asked me in his letter to help him redeem himself through merit. He must have known he was at fault, and had been holding onto a sliver of hope all along. Lu Wei had always carried this hidden crime. Before, the emperor didn't blame him for the sake of his beloved daughter Jinyu, but now that he broke off the engagement and hurt Jinyu's dignity, this charge was brought up to settle old scores. Jinyu wouldn't protect him anymore. Rebellion, breaking off the engagement, cowardice, and incompetence on the battlefield, 3 crimes combined. Lu Wei and his clan were sentenced to execution in autumn. But on the day of execution, Lu Wei broke out of prison and, relying on his prestige in the military, rebelled. It is said that the old emperor and the empress were both pierced through the heart by Lu Wei's sword, and he made Jinyu watch. The noble princess Jinyu was so frightened that she wet her skirt. Lu Wei lifted her up from the ground like a dog. The biggest mistake I ever made was exchanging the best of my soldiers, Zhao Ning, for you on the battlefield that day. I am going to save Zhao Ning. I am going to use all of Yue's national power to bring Zhao Ning back. Lu Wei seized the throne and declared himself emperor. The first thing he did after becoming emperor was to send a declaration of war to Qi. Sending a declaration of war wasn't enough. He even specially sent a carrier pigeon to me. The letter read, Zhao Ning, the old emperor pushed people too far, so I killed him. But don't be afraid. I know you hate him too. He was the one who executed your mother. He was the one who slaughtered your maternal grandfather's entire clan. He was the one who made you live worse than an ant in the palace. I killed him. I avenged you now. I am the Emperor of Yue, and I am coming to save you. I want you to openly become Princess Zhao Ning again. I want you to be my empress." The strokes on this letter grew more and more excited toward the end, especially for the words empress. I could imagine Lu Wei's mouth stretching past his ears when he wrote those two characters. Words can be infectious. If any random stranger read this letter, they could feel the joy and excitement of the writer. It was as if Lu Wei had turned into a little person on the letter, shouting at me, "I am coming to save you. I am going to make you my empress." But I just found it so noisy, as annoying as a fly buzzing around, and so ill-timed. Reading it made me inexplicably restless and irritated. "My precious little prince, give Daddy Emperor a smile." Xilin's voice coaxing the child reached my ears. I looked toward the sound, and there was Xilin in his black and gold dragon robe, holding our 1-month-old prince right after court, grinning from ear to ear. He had caused the downfall of many enemies and their nations, so he inevitably carried a murderous aura. The imperial majesty he exuded easily scared children to tears. At first, our little prince would cry pitifully whenever he saw his father, the emperor. Xilin anxiously reflected on himself, and finally concluded it was because his voice was too deep and rough. He even specially asked me for advice on how to raise the pitch. Having disguised myself as a man for so many years, I had experience with voice changing. With nothing to do during my postpartum recovery, I taught Xilin how to be a voice faker. Xilin studied this more seriously and diligently than he reviewed memorials. Finally, Xilin learned to raise his voice, coaxing his first child in an overly gentle tone. It is just that sometimes his voice would crack. The little prince in his swaddling clothes would nearly be asleep, only to always be woken up by his voice cracks. The little prince peed on Xilin's face and drooled on Xilin's dragon robe, but Xilin never showed a hint of temper. But when his voice crack woke the child, who then wailed and cried, he got a bit frustrated and blamed himself. "I can be an emperor, but I can't even be a voice faker." At this moment, I sat by the window of the imperial study, quietly watching Xilin softly coax our 1-month-old child. Forgot to mention, from Lu Wei's imprisonment, prison break, to rebellion, claiming the throne, quelling internal strife, and mobilizing the army to declare war on Qi Nation, it took exactly 1 year this year. Not only did my belly grow big, but the child has already had his 1-month celebration. As for the so-called 3-month promise, he never came. And of course, no one was waiting for him either. Xilin shook the Buddhist beads in his hand to tease the child, making a warm, deep wooden sound. The little prince babbled and laughed, reaching out to grab his imperial father's beads. Me restless thoughts vanished into thin air. I lazily picked up my brush and replied, "Today is my son's 1-month celebration. Don't come ruin the mood." The imperial palace of Qi Nation held a grand banquet for the prince's 1-month celebration, while the emperor and empress celebrated together with the people. In Yue Nation, Lu Wei spat a mouthful of blood onto the words "son's 1-month celebration" upon receiving the letter. When Lu Wei and I met again, he was the emperor of Yue Nation, and I was the empress of Qi Nation. The man standing beside me was no longer the former great general, but Xilin, an emperor after a whole year. Lu Wei finally remembered to investigate my true situation in Qi Nation. Then he learned, on the first day I was captured into the enemy camp, I became Xilin's bed-warming little slave. Within the first month, I voluntarily climbed onto Xilin's dragon bed. Within the first year, I gave birth to Xilin's prince, and was promoted from Xilin's imperial consort to empress. Lu Wei was filled with regret. He finally understood what prices one must pay to survive alone in enemy territory. He would rather believe I was forced by Xilin Jiaoning. I regret it. Lu Wei said to me sincerely and earnestly, "You are far more precious than Jinyu. I shouldn't have abandoned you for her." "I am sorry, Ninging." "Who said you could call her Ninging?" Xilin's hand rested on my shoulder, his possessive posture extremely domineering. "Zhoning is now the empress of Qi Lu Wei. Don't defile my beloved wife with your filthy mouth." Lu Wei's reddened eyes were about to cry, but Xilin's words provoked him into a rage. "What the hell are you? You lustful tyrant! Do you really think Zhoning could ever fancy you? You took her by force. Zhoning only has me in her heart." Before Lu Wei even finished spouting his crap, I had already, right in front of him, taken the initiative to embrace Shilin and kissed him on the cheek. Witnessing this scene, Lu Wei nearly fell off his horse. He barely steadied himself, his face full of anguish. Jiaoning, have you really betrayed your country and defected to the enemy for a man? Jinyu wasn't wrongly accusing you back then. I resumed my serious expression. Lu Wei, though I am a princess of the royal family, I never enjoyed any of the people's hard-earned wealth. The mountains and rivers of Yue raised me, and I also guarded the border for 10 years, protecting Yue's land and people from the invasion of the 17 Yue new kingdoms. I believe I've fulfilled my duties as a princess. But what did the Yue royal family give me in return? How did my mother die? Who was it that massacred the 600 members of my maternal grandfather's Yi family? Lu Wei, don't tell me you don't know. Lu Wei looked embarrassed. Of course he knew about all this, but he had never thought about seeking justice for me. He killed the emperor and rebelled because he himself was pushed to a dead end. Not for my sake. If there had been even the slightest room to maneuver, he would have abandoned me for the title of Grand General, for imperial wealth and glory. Before the emperor issued the decree branding me a traitor, I stayed by Shilin's side only to protect myself. It was you and the princess who framed me for treason. It was my own birth father who personally ordered that US soldiers were not to rescue me. Since I've already been abandoned by all of you, why should I shamelessly still consider Yue as my homeland? Do you deserve it? Lu Wei knew he was in the wrong. Jiaoning, I know you are just being stubborn. I've brought your enemy to you. A filthy, disheveled woman was dragged out from the Yue army. I stared for a long time before recognizing her as my high and mighty imperial sister Jinyu. Oh my, I thought she was dead already. She is still alive. Jinyu had a dirty black rag stuffed in her mouth. She couldn't speak, but kept struggling and making muffled screams sounded like she was cursing pretty filthily. Lu Wei's blade was pressed against Jinyu's neck. I know the hatred in your heart. Noble consort Shu and the entire Yi family were all killed because of something Jinyu tattled about when she was 8. Back then, my maternal grandfather's Yi family had distinguished military achievements. They were founding heroes and trusted ministers who assisted the emperor. My mother, noble consort Shu, was also greatly favored by the emperor at that time. I was still in my mother's womb. If not for those incidents, I would have been the happiest princess in the world from the moment I was born. That year, 8-year-old Jinyu came to my mother's palace for some snacks. When she left, she tattled to the emperor, saying she overheard the noble consort planning to rebel with her maternal clan. Just because of that one sentence, the emperor began pinning baseless crimes on the Yi family. First, he stripped their military power, then threw my grandfather and several of my uncles who had distinguished military achievements into prison. Me mother, 10 months pregnant, knelt before the emperor begging him to investigate the matter thoroughly. Yet the emperor held Jinyu's hand and said self-righteously, "The child heard you all plotting rebellion. She is only 8 years old, would she lie?" Later, my grandfather's entire family was convicted of treason by the emperor. Over 600 members of the Yi family were escorted to the imperial city and publicly beheaded. My mother died of grief and shock after giving birth to me. I heard from the nanny that when my mother died, her belly and face were all bruised purple. The #1 beauty of the capital, yet she was killed by the so-called wise ruler through some unknown poisoning. That I survived was because I was lucky. I only investigated and uncovered these matters after I grew up. I once heard with my own ears the empress praising Princess Jinyu. "My daughter is truly formidable." A single fabricated sentence led to the death of concubine Shu and also caused the deaths of 600 members of the Yi family. With the Yi family's fall, all the court's power will be in our family's hands from now on. Summonin once tried to overturn the verdict for the Yi family, and Jinyu provoked them in court. Even if this princess really did mishear back then, that was just innocent children's talk. Who dares blame me? I once placed my hopes in Lu Wei. I willingly served as his behind-the-scenes strategist, using military achievements one after another to prop him up to the position of Grand General. Because the Grand General has the authority to have the Emperor reinvestigate old cases involving military officials. I hoped he could overturn the verdict for the Yi family, but he chose Jinyu on the battlefield. Only then did I realize that Lu Wei and Jinyu were birds of a feather. The one who actually brought me close to my goal of revenge was unexpectedly the enemy nation's emperor, Shi Lin. Lu Wei thought that handing over Jinyu, my enemy, would make me forgive him and give him a chance. I said nothing, only drew my longbow, aiming straight at the center of Jinyu's forehead between her brows. Jinyu saw that I wanted to kill her and struggled in panic. Before the arrow hit her brow, she desperately escaped. From then on, the situation descended into chaos and war broke out. Lu Wei wanted to prove himself on the battlefield to show me he was no worse than Shilin, but he soon discovered that the army behind him didn't really obey his commands. The one who taught us to win with fewer numbers and outsmart the enemy in the army back then, wasn't you? It was the sixth prince. No, it should be the sixth princess, Princess Zhoning. Princess Zhoning is our true commander. We only follow her orders. After the leading general finished speaking, the tens of thousands of soldiers at the border recited in unison, Princess Zhoning is our true commander. We only follow her orders. During my 10 years at the border, I lived and ate with the soldiers as a prince, treating everyone with kindness. They truly considered me a brother, and I truly regarded them as comrades. So one day, they suddenly discovered that this easygoing, carefree prince was actually supposed to be a pampered princess of noble birth. And this princess, when public sentiment was uneasy and morale was low, personally wrote letters to give them hope. Thus, I had completely won over the hearts of the army and the people. In this battle, Lu Wei only had a few old troops loyal to him to fight for him. Naturally, he suffered a crushing defeat and fled back to the city in disgrace. Jinyu, who was fleeing all over the battlefield, fell into my hands. Elder sister, wake up. I patted Jinyu's face. If she didn't open her eyes soon, I would slap her. She opened her eyes, but I still slapped her anyway. Her face was knocked to the side by my slap. She gnashed her teeth and tried to rush over to fight back, but her hands and feet were tied with rope. Beside me were the imperial guards sent by Shilin. Only when Jinyu saw the guards' blades drawn did she finally cower. This imperial sister of mine has always been the type to bully the weak and fear the strong. I didn't gag her, so she started cursing me for defecting to the enemy and being a sycophant, cursing me for framing her. I gladly accepted. I did indeed defect to the enemy after all. Lu Wei's eventual rebellion and regicide was the result of my sowing discord. I did indeed act like a sycophant. I heard from Shilin that when you were captured, you also considered using this tactic. But you wanted to survive while maintaining your lofty princess airs, saying that Shilin had to make you empress before you deigned to marry him. Why didn't Shilin pay you any attention? Is it that you didn't act like a sycophant because you didn't want to? Isn't Imperial Sister's favorite thing stealing her little sister's men? Look, now I am the empress. And you are still a prisoner of war in my hands. I flung her to the ground, and only then did she realize she'd been brought to a peony garden, a valley full of blooming peonies. The very valley where she was captured by the Qi kingdom. Do you know why there is a valley full of peonies in such a desolate borderland? I leaned close to Jinyu's ear and whispered, because every peony in this valley was planted by my own hands, just for you, imperial sister. Jinyu's eyes went wide, staring at me in horror. When you came to the border to play that day, it wasn't to admire the peonies. You heard that this valley of peonies was planted by Lu Wei for me to see, and you got jealous, didn't you? The news about Lu Wei planting peonies for me was something I deliberately spread to the capital for you alone to hear. Jinyu looked at me in terror while I was smiling. Knowing that imperial sister likes Lu Wei and also likes peony flowers, I specially raised hundreds of carrier pigeons to correspond with Lu Wei, especially during the time when Lu Wei returned to the capital. In every letter I sent him, I deliberately tucked in peony petals. All for the purpose of telling imperial sister that the man you like and the flowers you like are both in my hands. As expected, You burned with jealousy and lost your mind, running to the border. The moment you entered the border, Imperial Sister, you fell into the trap. I might as well tell you, it was indeed I who leaked the information about you enjoying flowers here to the Chi Kingdom. The reason they could ambush so precisely was all calculated by me in advance. So when Imperial Sister said I wanted to frame you, you weren't wrong at all. Your little sister here just wants you dead. Jinyu scrambled backward on all fours. I grabbed her by the hair. Do you know why I want you to die here? Because when you were 8 years old, your careless words not only killed my closest kin, but also indirectly killed 100,000 soldiers at the border. Just because they were once the Yi family army, Imperial Father became suspicious of them. 15 years ago, during that heavy snow, 100,000 soldiers were trapped in the valley waiting for rescue, but the court's reinforcements never came. The 17 Yinnu kingdoms seized the opportunity to join forces and trapped 100,000 loyal ministers and good generals to death in this very valley. They first burned them with fire, then smashed them with stones and left them to starve and freeze to death. When the ice melted, those 17 nations specially sent soldiers to stab each corpse once, just afraid they weren't completely dead. The motherland sent no one to collect their bodies. The motherland's emperor only cared about suspecting whether these 100,000 men would rebel against him because of the Yi family. He had already forgotten that these 100,000 men were heroes who protected their home and country. He only wanted them dead. So those 100,000 loyal souls slowly rotted away in this valley, eventually merging into the soil. From then on, for 10 years, not a single blade of grass grew in this valley. I spent 10 years at the border, planting peonies for 10 years. Last year they finally bloomed, and they bloomed throughout the entire valley. Then I knew those 100,000 loyal souls wanted me to seal Princess Jinyu's fate for them. Jinyu's face was deathly pale. She was trembling all over with fear. I believe that in her eyes at this moment I must be even more terrifying than a vengeful ghost. Ever since I could remember, I knew I was meant to demand lives from the imperial family for my kin and the loyal souls. Jinyu died by my hand. She knelt among the peony flowers, her head hanging low, both arms stretched out in front of her, knees bent to the greatest arc, a posture of kneeling prostrate in confession. A long spear pierced through her back, pinning her to the ground. For all eternity, she would never deserve the peace of reincarnation. Not long after Jinyu died, Lu Wei was also defeated. This emperor of his, whose claim to the throne was neither legitimate nor justified, had always had an unstable foundation. The soldiers at the front had lost faith in him, and the loyal veterans who once followed him had been wasted on the battlefield by his far from brilliant military strategies, leaving only a handful of survivors. When he was defeated, he propped himself up with a sword. I went to see him. He grabbed my dress and pulled out a small wooden sword from his chest. This wooden sword was a birthday gift I had carved for him. Jianing, I still remember what you said back then, that this wooden sword would make me invincible. He looked up, a blood-mixed tear sliding down from the corner of his eye. Ninging, turns out without you, I would be defeated so completely. I regret it, Ninging. Can you call me General one more time like you used to? Even just once would be enough. I watched his pathetic state with cold eyes. Lu Wei, I really did see you as someone I could rely on. In those first few days after being captured and taken to the Qi Kingdom, I waited day and night for you to descend from the heavens like a hero on your white war horse. Because you promised you would come to my rescue immediately, I even made up all sorts of excuses for your failure to keep your promise. Even though it was you who broke the promise, I instinctively wanted to make excuses for you. When I needed you the most, when I was most helpless, you were busy taking care of the injured Jinyu, busy protecting her reputation, busy having your grand wedding with her. My voice was desolate. General. Ha, the general died long ago. He was a hero I made up in my head. Lu Wei, you were never my hero. So what gives you the right to tell me you regret it? I turned to leave, but Lu Wei grabbed the hem of my skirt. He fell down, blood continuously flowing from the wound on his arm, yet he wouldn't let go. Ninging, it hurts. I looked back, watching him crouch humbly at my feet, gazing up at me, begging for my change of heart and mercy. I reached out my hand and yanked my skirt hem away. Your blood has stained my dress. Jianing. Jilin took off his outer robe, and while draping it over me, he conveniently pulled me into his arms. I heard everything. So in this chess game of yours, even I, the Emperor of Qi, am just a pawn you use to kill with a borrowed knife. Am I no different from Lu Wei? I thought he was going to be angry that I used him, but unexpectedly his focus was on how he compared to Lu Wei. You are already a pawn, and you still want to compete for rankings. Of course, even among pawns, there are important and unimportant ones, useful and useless ones. Fine, fine, fine. You are more useful than Lu Wei, more important than Lu Wei. Only a little more important? Much more important, 1,000 times, 10,000 times more. You are the one and only piece on my chessboard. After all that, I am still just a chess piece. Jilin walked a few steps faster, puffing with annoyance. I had no choice but to jog a few steps to catch up. I really don't know how to say sweet nothings, seeing that he was angry. I had to coax him lately. He has been throwing even more tantrums than our little prince. Jilin looked at me seriously. I thought he was going to get jealous again. Zhao Ning, do you know why I didn't kill Jin Yu that day? Because I wanted to trade her worthless life for your freedom. I was stunned. Why, back then, we had no connection, and we were even enemies at each other's throats. Jilin said, saving you was like saving my past self surrounded by enemies on all sides with no one to rely on. Besides, the few defeats I've suffered since ascending the throne were all due to your strategies. Such a formidable enemy turned out to be a princess hiding her identity, not daring to reveal who she was. I considered killing you, but somehow I couldn't bear to. Since I couldn't bear to, I had no choice but to trick you into coming here and make you mine. I was feeling touched when Jilin suddenly changed his tone, but I really didn't expect you to climb into the imperial bed so fast. I thought it would take at least a year MMPH. This time, it was my turn to be so embarrassed that I covered his mouth. Jilin grabbed my hand and pressed it against his heart. Zhao Ning, my feelings for you are not a passing fancy sparked by your beauty. I was determined to have you. I smiled like spring breeze melting into water. I know. Let's go home. Fighting wars is boring. I miss our little prince. I'll take you home. As for whether Lu Wei lived or died, I had no idea. After I left with Jilin, I never looked back at Lu Wei again. Some said he died of serious injuries on the battlefield. Others said he went mad and stayed in the valley tending to those peony flowers, constantly muttering that Ningning likes peonies. But I never liked peonies. It doesn't matter to me. He is nothing more than doesn't matter. Later, the Yue kingdom became a vassal of the Qi kingdom. Jilin never harmed a single citizen or soldier, and so the prayer beads in his hand remained only 17. Xilin's prayer beads became our son's favorite toy. Xilin's 18th bead was added by me. That year, our second princess was born. The borders were stable, and the people prosperous. The 18th prayer bead prayed for no more wars, prosperity and peace, blessings for all living beings, and tranquil years.